Welcome back to This Was Supposed to Be Easy, your go-to podcast for connection, joy, and a good dose of laughter.
Hosted by two friends who've seen enough of life to know that it's never as simple as it sounds
or looks.
Each conversation celebrates the diverse journeys we travel, the moments of bravery, the strength we didn't know we had, and the joy we find along the way.
Because let's be honest, life is full of things that were supposed to be easy, but turned out to be harder.
And definitely funnier
than we thought. This is Amy.
And this is Cheryl. And if it were easy, we wouldn't be here. I feel like I need like a bell or confetti to throw or something in my hands. It is episode 50, Amy.
That's pretty amazing. It's pretty amazing when you think about that.
Seriously, when I think about episode 50, I put like a little picture of a golden 50 balloon on our social media. It reminded me of like my 50th birthday and turning 50 and that mindset that I went into, like 50 is going to be the great year. I'm not going to be the person who's like afraid or mad about being 50. And I still talk about that 50th birthday and how it's the best birthday I've ever had. But when I think about this, I think about you and I recording episode 50. It's true. Like when you turn 50, people aren't still saying you're young. And they sort of transition to you've lived. And it feels a little different. And it's not a bad different, right? Like I'm thinking about you and I in this podcast, right? 50 doesn't feel like number one. Season 2 doesn't feel like season 1. Yeah. It's not as, I don't know, frantic. In fact, we just spent 45 minutes talking about what we might want to talk about, which we could talk about a long time.
We absolutely could talk about that a long time. But I think one of the things that we really kind of covered were all of the different things that we have learned in these 50 episodes and the conversations that we've had. And of course, we always like to play around a little bit with like chat and see what connections and things like that happen. But even recently, I had my daughter make me a spreadsheet, or make us, I should say, a spreadsheet of all of the topics that we have covered in these last 50 episodes. And it was really helpful to even kind of go back and look at what have we talked about. I can remember bits and pieces of every conversation that we've had, but it was so helpful to go through and kind of look at our titles of what we've talked about, kind of where those experiences, the interviews that we've done, the guests that we've had, but also what kind of reaffirming or appearing themes that kind of keep coming up. And so I thought that it might be a little fun because no one wants to listen to me read all 50 titles. You can go to anything that you listen to and see those together. But what are some of those general themes that we kind of keep coming up with? And then what have we learned from those themes? Like what have we done? And how does that look for us? So the first one of the general themes is connection is built through intention, not ease.
Will you do me a favor? And I'm nervous for my brain that is very squirrely today. You said how many themes? 6?
We have 6 themes.
6 themes. So for the sake of Cheryl's over 50 brain, would you like tell us all 6 themes and then let's think about that and talk about it more.
All right. So number 1, connection is built through intention, not ease. Number 2 is joy is something you practice, not something you wait for. 3 is growth often starts with letting go. 4, confidence is built in motion, not certainty. And 5, being heard is sometimes more powerful than being fixed. No one likes being fixed, just to say that. And 6, seasons matter.
Amy, I feel like I just read the table of contents for a book, like
right?
chapter titles.
I mean, I love that idea.
Oh, see, we might be seasoned, a little bit seasoned and not brand new anymore with podcasts. Maybe it's time to be brand new at writing a book with these 6 chapters.
Right. I'm game. Let's see what else we
Okay.
can come up with. Might add a chapter here or there.
Let's fit more into our schedules.
Right. I think, yeah, that's definitely one. So let's go back and revisit that first one. That
Okay.
connection is built through ease or intention, not ease. How do you feel like that has shown up for you?
Well, I mean, if we're looking at the different things that we've talked about, and maybe so many of the times that we have thought about how to be intentional with this, I do think a lot about the early episodes where we talked about friendship. And I know that those episodes stand out a lot with the women that I'm teaching, because when I show them the podcast, that's where I see a lot of comments coming through, being intentional about making friends, about keeping friends. We even talked about, going out places to find friends. And none of those things are easy. I guess that's a play on words, right? With this
Right.
podcast.
Right.
But just that whole time period, even though it was spaced out a little bit, right? Of thinking about inviting people over, and even the friendships we've had where we've supported our friends in trauma or letting go of friendships, that all of those stand out to me in terms of really thinking about that connection and the effort it takes and the benefits that come from the effort.
I love that you mentioned the friendship piece as kind of the core part of it, because I am reminded of some of the conversations that I've had with those that have been close to me. It comes back a lot to the episode of letting go of person that no longer fits,
Hmm.
and how that topic has shifted and changed some individuals' ways of thinking about how uncomfortable that can feel. But also, I use the term grief often in a lot of things that I say. And when you grieve the loss of a friendship, but it takes intention too to recognize that by trying to keep something alive that's limping along,
Hmm.
I almost kind of think, as I tie it together, have you ever watched a show, maybe a sitcom, that really should have ended in season 4? Like season 4 was the good season and it would
Yes.
have had such a great ending. And then they kept it going for 3 more seasons and then it just got weird. Like,
Hmm.
I think of a friendship like that a little bit when we read this topic. Like, are you holding on to a friendship that has just gotten weird, that you're like, I don't know what we're doing anymore? Like, we had this very clear, defined relationship. It looked like this. It went like this. It made sense like this. And then you kept it going and you kept it going maybe past its prime. And then you're kind of looking at each other going like, you're not who I thought you were. I'm not who you thought you were. But now it's gotten weird and we don't know how to make this kind of like, how do we just let this go?
Hmm.
And I think that those are some of the things that we talked about. We revisited a few times over, but that's a general theme that I think comes up in a lot of people's lives that isn't a one and done.
Yeah. I have literally had people say, thank you for giving me permission to take that next step. It's been on my mind, but I hadn't thought about it in the way you talked about it. And it's time. Or I've also had people say, it's time for me to reach out and fix this, right? Relationships require courage to try whatever you really feel is the next best thing for that relationship. And letting go can be as loving as holding on, and working to hold on sometimes is the love that we need to have. So I really do love that that was an emerging theme over many, many episodes for us. And just really love that I think together you and I have explored and unearthed and learned that what happens in our friendships grows or moves in the direction it moves in best because we've decided that it's important for us to take that next step.
I would agree. So the next one is joy is something you practice, not something you wait for.
One of our favorite topics that we've covered with one of our favorite people.
Yes, we bring joy. I feel like we use the word joy in a lot of episodes. In fact, if we were to go through and look at our transcript, I wonder how many times we have used joy over these last 50 episodes.
Would it be as much as curiosity, though?
I don't know. I use curiosity a lot. But joy is such a fun word, to kind
Mhm.
of think about. And I think when it comes to joy, so something you practice, not something you wait for. I like the idea of tying kind of the topic in number one to the topic of number two, joy. And so what I really think about is you have to plan out opportunities to seek joy. And that what I take away with this one the most are the times that we've talked about, I think we said joy gazing or looking for different joyful moments, different ways that we can feel joy, recognizing it and seeking it out in little micro bits in our everyday lives so that it's something that's always at the forefront of our brain that we continue to see and build upon. And that's how we get to have a more kind of joyful life, a joyful existence. We're even working on a project right now with Dr. Holly Hoffman where we're asking people what brings them joy, and we've taken that into breaking it into themes. And I think through some of what we've looked at in our podcast, we've found those reoccurring themes often start with relationships. We
Yes.
looked
Yes.
at some of these things, and really the whole reason we started this podcast way back in episode 1, in the 9 months of the pre-planning before we ever even released an episode, the whole time we just kept talking about we want to help people build better relationships. We
Mhm.
want people to kind of think about their life in an intentional way and all of those misconceptions that we thought were going to be easier, but especially when it came to relationships. And I think talking about joy in a way is an opportunity to also seek out joyful relationships.
Agreed. And as I just think back, there were several episodes where we very intentionally had joy as sort of our main topic, but then it sort of just emerged in others, right?
Mhm.
Like as we talked about gratitude, as we talked about noticing the good, as we talked about trust, right? Like we, I think ourselves started unearthing some of those keys to finding joy, creating joy that can exist not just in happy moments, but throughout the threads of life. And I think we've learned how to just kind of take that emotional tone as we even encounter grief and stress and crazy schedules and all of the things. And it's been a guide for us.
It has. All right. So we know what joy can bring to our life, how it can make it so much more better, much more meaningful, more better. I don't know.
More
More
better. I like more
meaningful,
better.
more better works, whatever. But it can make things. And so I think in looking for those moments, we can kind of move into that third one, which is growth often starts with letting go. We have talked a lot about letting go. In fact, as I am looking at our list of titles, we have 4 episodes specifically that are letting go of an idea, letting go of a person, letting go of guilt, letting go of a after the gift. We like letting go quite a bit. But I think it's important to think about what it means to let go of something and then what opportunities can fill in that space. Because I think about myself and we in this as we're talking, we have talked about like kind of the busy lives we both lead. And there are times in my everyday existence I think I can't do one more thing, right? I can't.
Mhm.
But over the course of the last year, I took on multiple new things. But in order to be able to do that, I had to let go of a couple different things. I had to let go of some of the projects that were no longer serving me. I had to let go of the expectation that my life was going to look a certain way and that my free time was going to look a certain way right now and that my relationships were going to look a certain way. By being intentional still with all of those things, but also recognizing that I was letting go of those preconceived notions, it opened up the opportunity for me to shift and start some new things that have been really fulfilling and really important in my life, but also have been a stretch of kind of my mental ability, my resources. You know, I love to talk about resources as
Mhm.
time, effort, energy, and money, but has been that as a whole. And so I think about letting go can feel scary, but it also can be one of the greatest gifts you can give yourself. And so
Yeah.
as we've kind of looked at this through multiple episodes, it's just one that I like to remind myself of a lot because I think it's really important. It's important to let some things go that are no longer filling what we need.
Yeah. It's even important to let go of the guilt that comes from letting go, which I know we're going to talk about in an upcoming episode when we talk about saying no.
Right.
So, how about the fourth one?
So the fourth one is confidence is built in motion, not in certainty.
We are always in motion, Amy.
We are always in motion. And you know what? I'm so grateful to be in motion. I don't want to be stagnant in any part of my life or my existence. I think motion is a good place to be. And I'm not even saying like always have to be doing, but even doing can be reflecting, right? You
Because
know, and
wintering's important too.
wintering is important too. Absolutely. But I think that the confidence piece of that, I will say, I want to go back real quick to like the start of this whole conversation and that I know I am not the same person in episode 50 that I am in episode 1. Yes,
Mhm.
I share a lot of the same beliefs and the same thoughts and the same way that I engage and interact. However, I also am more confident after having 50 episodes underneath my belt. I'm more confident in the way that I talk, in the way that I engage, the way that I ask questions, because I feel like I've been given the opportunity that not everyone gets. And that's I get to be a passive listener in my own conversational like needs. And where I go with that, or what I mean by that, is so often I'll have a conversation with somebody. And listeners, if you've been here and have done this as well, I'm inviting you to share. But I have been in a conversation with someone and I'll start thinking like, man, I shouldn't have said that. That was dumb. Ooh, and like I have completely derailed what I'm actually saying to the point that I don't even recognize what I'm saying. I'm only half-heartedly listening to what the other person's saying. And I am so wrapped up going in a spiral of everything I shouldn't have said, how that could be as perceived as dumb or stupid or all of those different things, or uh-oh, like danger Will Robinson back out of the situation. And I don't feel like I do that quite as much anymore. Don't get me wrong. There are still plenty of times that I think, Amy, why? Why did you say that? But more often now, I can think about something and slow down my thought process to be like, what did I want to do with that? And I didn't have to be certain of even what I was saying going into it, which has allowed me to be much more genuine and a lot more self-reflective because I had the opportunity to listen to 50 conversations that I have had and think about, does that still land right with me? Does that still sound like something that feels on brand with me? Or what the heck was I thinking when I was going on this tangent, right? Like, where was I going with that? And sometimes silence is just okay. Not usually on a podcast. You got to fill some airtime. Too much silence gets a little weird. But in real conversations, sometimes silence is okay. And
Yeah.
it's been really interesting for me to reflect on what that looks like.
I just want to sit with that for a minute because you said it, I think you said it twice, but I feel like it needs an emphasis. There's something different from participating in your daily conversations that you never get to actually revisit. There's something different between that and having this opportunity that you and I have to listen to our recorded conversations.
Hmm.
And I think that's what you're saying. I mean, sometimes just to get an episode onto Spotify, Apple Music, all the things, I've listened to it, I've participated in it once. I've listened to the edited version to make sure that it's ready to air. And then often when I'm driving on that day, I will listen to it the morning that it airs. And so sometimes I'll get to have some level of engagement with the exact same conversation 3 times. And it really does allow the opportunity to think differently. And yes, I guess, growing your confidence in some of the things that you've thought about before.
And I think also to modify, or
Mhm.
maybe even I know for
Fix.
myself, I can say things not in this episode clearly, but I can say things a little bit more conceptually or say things a little bit more concisely because I might have listened to it 3 times and said, like, where was I going with that? I want to cut out the fluff. And so if I'm going to say that again to somebody else, or I'm going to say that in a presentation, or I'm going to say that in something else in the podcast, it allows me the opportunity to streamline my thoughts in a way that I'm not often given in any other area of my life because
Did
I'm
you
having the conversation in real time.
did you just admit that we are using our listeners as a rehearsal? Right?
Not all the time. There are plenty of times, but that I am, probably doing everything else before I come to the listeners. But I mean, yes, thank you. Thank you, listeners, for sometimes being
Yeah.
the guinea pigs to my thought.
But I do like, confidence is built in motion, not in certainty. And I just want to say, that was number 4 that you already read. I just want to say that I mean, I think that's what we almost work to emulate and work to model, because if we wait for certainty, if we wait for something to be perfect, we might never do anything. But if we're just willing to take step 1, I mean, I think we recorded episode 1 twice and we had a script. I mean, but we took the action, right? We found enough confidence to move, and we felt unsure about ourselves, but we kept going. And I think that's a picture of much of the way leadership is and much of the way life is that it begins before you actually feel ready. I mean, who feels ready to help shape another human's life the moment they have that baby? You're not ready to support the adolescent when that baby is born, right? Like it grows with us as long as we take the effort to start moving and keep moving. Confidence will come.
Confidence will come. Yep. The more times you do something, the more confident you are in it. It's why it takes a full year before you feel confident in doing a new job or a new task, right?
Right.
Okay. Number 5, being heard is sometimes more powerful than being fixed.
Mm,
And like I said before, no one wants to be fixed. But this one actually, I can kind of pull in double duty, so to speak. I am getting ready to give a presentation. And the other night, took to LinkedIn and I asked the question on LinkedIn. And it was, what is one thing that you wish your manager, your supervisor, your boss knew about you as a human in order for you to be a better employee?
mm.
And in that, so listeners, hey, it's still open on LinkedIn if you want to go over and answer that question. But here's where I thought that was really interesting. Numerous people answered, numerous people sent me direct messages. All of the people had something about their humanity of wishing that somebody didn't try to step in and fix them, that they just listened and that they weren't trying to perfect them or shape them in a way that they thought that that person should be, but that they actually took the time to either sit with them in their grief, to not make assumptions, to allow them to be a little bit bitter, to be better in the end, to actually see that their spoken truth was the truth of the team or was the truth of their lived experience instead of trying to change their perspective on something, but they actually were believed in the moment that was, or that someone even took the time to get to see them and their struggles and be able to say, hey, I see you struggling. Like what can I do to support you in this? And that was a reoccurring theme, but I think it fits so well here because we often speak about what it looks like just to show up for people. And I know we've used that exact line and what it means to show up and what it means to listen and what it means to be a safe space for somebody and to offer the reflective practice of just saying, tell me more, or
Yeah.
yes, your lived experience is your lived experience. I might not understand it that way because I didn't live it that way, but I believe that you did. And all that that means, and just being kind.
As I hear you say all those things and really think about being heard, I repeatedly circle back to the question, the skill of asking questions, and how using an opportunity to ask someone questions to learn about them, to understand their perspective, to maybe help them dig deeper towards an answer they're looking for. That's so different than telling them what I know or telling them what I think they should do. And I think about that with adults. I think about that with coaching. And I think about that with even with the work in early childhood and the immense value of listening to children and watching children with the goal of thinking, what does this child need from me versus what should I teach them so that they meet an outcome? There's so much, you're right. There's so much power in being heard. And I love that we hit upon that in very different themes or intentions, as far as themes. Like we had several episodes specifically about listening, but we had an episode about disability where we learned, you and I, we learned perspectives we hadn't thought about before because
Right?
we were listening, right? We hit upon it when we were talking about showing kindness or even, the workplace well-being. It came through over and over and over again in such a way that I believe that we've come to this point in our life where we are more focused on relational. We are thinking about the courage to be kind and the courage to listen, not to just follow. Because I think listening changes what you know about people, it changes what you believe about the world, it changes you.
Yeah. And I think when we listen to other people, and the idea of it changing you makes us a little bit better sometimes too.
Yeah.
Um,
Flop it.
yeah, yeah. All right. So the next one I
The
know is
final one.
the final one is a theme that you often talk about, and that's that seasons matter. And so we have talked about things like wintering. We've talked about mid-year check-ins. We've talked about holidays and New Year's and routines. We've talked about things that we've learned about and what that looks like in our different episodes, especially upon conclusions and things like that. What I think about with seasons matter, I have definitely recognized over this last year, maybe because I'm consciously aware. I've always known it, but I'm consciously aware of the examples in which it shows up in my life that I am a little bit different at different times of the year. Like
Mhm.
I am much more energetic in the spring and winter. I
Spring
I
and winter?
Sorry, spring and summer.
Oh,
Not
you I
not
was like,
winter,
"Really?"
not winter. No, no. Spring and summer, those longer days, and especially days with sunshine
Uh-huh.
matter to me in a way that I don't know if I ever really like, I always knew a little, like, oh, the doldrums of the long winter days, but, nope, feeling it pretty intensely this year. But also the idea of slowing down and resting and taking the time that I love what you've shared with wintering and the idea of doing all of that well and how important rest is, but I think about the seasons now a little bit differently and maybe can consciously plan a little more of what I need in order to be the best version of myself because of that.
Yeah. I've said this before. You hear us repeat things all the time, so I'm asking forgiveness, but I'm taking a group to Sweden and Finland in May. And we had a meeting yesterday. And one of the ways that we're approaching our trip and our exploration of play while we're there is through the Moomins, who are fictional characters that were there's several books about the Moomins. It was then turned into a TV show. We were talking about Moomins and our Moomin characters yesterday. And in that process, I haven't read enough yet to know that the Moomins hibernate. it made me stop and it made me pause to think, ooh, even these fictional characters that were written with very adult intention and subtext, but written as children's stories, are showing the importance and value of seasons and rest and the fact that there's still something productive about resting, or that it's okay to pause doesn't mean quit. I'm knitting right now. And, I paused knitting for several years. And then this winter, I was like, I have to do it and I have to do it now. And, so I didn't quit. I just paused. And now I'm able to enjoy it again, where tired of it for a little while.
Hey, I know for myself, sometimes especially if I pick up a big book series with like multiple editions, I can read about three and then I'm like, I need to take a break before, even though I love the characters, I need to step away from them for a little while. I'll come back, but I'm usually good for about three books and then I need to take a break and then I can go back and enjoy three more eventually, but
Yeah.
I can't do too much of any one thing. I like my deep dives. I do those quite frequently, but I like my breaks too.
We all like your deep dives because it's why we can name any topic in almost the world and you will have something you can tell us about
That is one of those things that I can do.
We all benefit from your deep dive. Hey, Amy, it's been a hot minute since you've given us an update on your organization project.
Well, let me tell you, I do think about my project every Sunday as I do my self-reflection journal that I have to turn in, and I have made some connections. And it is that I have started to kind of pull things out I know I want to get rid of. I have also learned that maybe in my true Amy fashion, I often overshoot of what I hope to accomplish in the finite amount of time that I have. And so my goal, kind of backtracking a little bit, is that over the course of kind of these next few weeks, while I still have time to do it, is really about clearing things out. And if all those other things that I want to have come about as well or come about, that's great. But I think even making some minimal steps. So I have talked to some individuals who are willing to take some of the extra books and things like that off my hands, because one of the things is I felt really bad throwing them in landfills. I have also gone through and cleared up some of the miscellaneous stuff. Don't get me wrong, there's still more miscellaneous things that I need to get rid of, but I have made little bits of progress here and there.
So, as I said, this is episode 50. I put it out there on our social media. We sent messages to people who have reached out to us to tell us that they were listening. And we thought that it would be important for episode number 50 to talk a little bit about what you and I, Amy, we've talked about the themes that we've uncovered, but what are some things that you and I have learned because we showed up, we pressed record, a few times we pressed delete and started over again. But now we're at a point where we're like, hey, let's just hit record and see what happens. What are some of the things that we've learned along the way? And I'm going to start this one off, if you don't mind.
Please do.
Which I think we sort of touched on a few minutes ago, and that is the you don't need to know the whole path to start. Right. So our early episodes, even our current episodes, are not necessarily perfectly polished, but some of you have hung in there. You're still listening and we're still figuring it out, but we're figuring it out by doing. And I think that not just you and I have evolved because of that. I think the show has evolved because we were willing to start without knowing the whole path. And we put a request out there to our listeners. And I feel like Ashley had a comment that sort of speaks to this. Amy, if you can read that to us.
She did. She said, I loved getting to talk about my journey of trying things out and pivoting when needed, and that leading to my website of Rating Ranch. She said, biased, I know. I love that there's something for everyone in each episode.
Love it. And I really love particularly Ashley's episode, because I'll have some people who have told me they didn't listen to that episode because they didn't need to hear about ranch. And I'm like, but that's not really what it was
What
about.
is about. Yeah.
It was about trying something and pivoting when that didn't work, and trying something new, and tapping into your passions and interests as you're trying things. And I really think Ashley had some good lessons about that. And even one of my own students who was listening to the podcast recently shared with me that that episode was her favorite episode, and it was because she loves ranch.
I mean, hey, it's a fun topic, right?
I know, I know. So another one of those things that we've learned is that while you and I are both busy, and we don't want to portray this idea that everyone should be really busy. We definitely don't want to portray that. We have worked really hard, Amy, you and I, to be consistent even through that busyness. And I hope I hope that that consistency that we've worked to build, and when I to be very explicit, I'm saying that every Wednesday an episode actually drops. We've done it. We did it.
Yeah.
We got next week's episode recorded. That kind of consistency. We hope that it's building trust with you all, our listeners, because we didn't really even build in holiday breaks at this point in time, or a break between seasons. We wanted to build that trust with you and create a space where you knew you could tune in every Wednesday and there would be a new episode, even if we bumbled our way through it, even if we were showing it up imperfectly. And I feel motivation from that. I believe you do, Amy. And I think Jenny made a comment to that effect.
She did. She said, "It's not an episode for me. It's the act of watching two women juggle careers, kids, schools, and passion projects like this podcast. That's what inspires me. You're reaching for more in your lives, and that makes me want to reach as well. And by the way, congratulations."
Oh, thank you, Jenny. That was so sweet. And it really does feel good, doesn't it? So the next thing that the two of us have continued to learn is that creating something public is vulnerable. Sometimes we're sharing our thoughts in real time. Cheryl is so known for speaking as the thought is forming, the words are coming out of my mouth. So, y'all are getting a lot of those real time thoughts from us, and that's vulnerable. But it's also been really fun. Especially the listening episode is coming to mind right now because I very specifically talked a little bit about family. And I had Kevin's cousin who lives in Australia reach out and, literally said, "I'm listening." And his other cousin mentioned it at a holiday party this past December. She said, "I laughed when I heard you talk about, the family drinking coffee in the morning." And I was like, yes, that was a vulnerable moment, but I'm glad. I'm glad that it offered an opportunity for me to share a little inside joke with a, couple family members. And so I think we've really stepped into the practice, or the attempt at needing to always be liked by everybody in exchange for sharing thoughts that are important.
Yes. And I hope for our listeners, they recognize that perfection can be really boring and no one needs to be showing up on a podcast as a perfect version of themselves, because no, there is no perfect version. And so I think too, with that, I love the idea that people get to know us a little bit more as the human beings with our flaws and all of that we have as well. And for those listeners that continue to show up, thank you.
Well, you know how many times someone has said to me, whether I'm off on an adventure, usually when I'm leaving on an adventure, some person, often someone who's older than me, will say, "Well, be good." And literally my instant response is, why would I want to do that? That
Right.
doesn't sound very fun.
That's not fun. Yep.
I would much rather make mistakes and
Yes.
have, truly adventure. So, did Jeremy have a comment that sort of fit with that?
He did. He said being included as a guest was an easy favorite of for me. Digging a little deeper, there are many moments that stand out. In particular, your episode ahead of the 2025 winter holidays was a helpful reminder to remember to enjoy to not expect perfection from ourselves and others, and to keep up the incredible work. Wow, 50 episodes already.
I just want to say thank you to Jeremy for being one of our biggest cheerleaders, even though sometimes you pop your head in behind and give us grief. We love it. And you really are one of our biggest supporters, and I'm grateful. Okay. Another thing we've learned, Amy, is that I think through all of the processes that we've engaged in, from you mentioned the 9 months that we just used to make lists and brainstorm and research and listen to others, that process has really shaped the messages that we hope we're sharing with everyone. There have been so many themes that have emerged organically. You will have this conversation, we'll do a recording, and while we're recording, I'm writing words on a piece of paper because I'm thinking we need to have an episode about that. In fact, I think that next week's episode is about saying no. And as soon as it ended, or while it was ending, I said, Amy, the next one we have to do is listening when someone says no. All right. So I think that we've learned that themes do emerge organically in our own heads from our own words, but also from listener feedback. Hearing those comments, reading the comments, having people send emails, make a post on any of our social media accounts or LinkedIn, it really helps us clarify what matters and what we all can think grow better from digging into a little bit. And really, I think that's what we're becoming, Amy. We're not here answering everybody's questions. We're digging. We're learning right alongside everyone else, and then learning more as we listen to ourselves talk for the second time and for the third time. And you were sharing something with me before we started recording a little bit that I think would fit in really good with this idea of the process shaping the message.
So I think about with this, I did mention the opportunity that we're fortunate enough that we get to re-listen to ourselves.
True.
But I know for myself, one of the things that I love to ask people now is, what have you been thinking about? What are some of your, like, what's been swirling around in your brain? Because one, it might be fodder for the podcast, but two, I know for myself, I'm a big thinker. I love to listen to other people's podcasts. I love to take what I'm reading. I love watching a TED Talk or a master class or something like that and think about, well, what does that mean for me? Or what does that mean in my life? Or what does that mean for the people that I know about? Or those that are close to me, and kind of make it real in that. And so I feel like within this process, every time I have one of those conversations and someone shares what they're thinking about, it gives me an opportunity to think about it, or to think about it through their lens, and to kind of bounce ideas back and forth. And so one of the things that I hope I never stop doing is thinking big thoughts, but thinking thoughts because other people are willing to be vulnerable and share their thoughts, or other people are willing to reach out and say, well, I was thinking about this, or what's keeping me up at night is this thought, or, I don't know enough about this topic to talk about it, but it's what I keep thinking about. And so those types of things really shape who we are, or at least I should say, shape who I am when I'm coming to these conversations, and definitely has me growing in different ways.
I mean, how cool is it that by virtue of talking more and recording what we're saying, we're becoming better listeners and learning from it? Love it. Okay, so on that same line, I think the last thing that I want to bring up in terms of in this moment, what we know we have learned, or at least are on the pathway of continuing to learn, does circle back once again to those messages that we're hearing from others, those things that we're getting to listen to because we're able to ask more people questions. And that is that the impact it's not always loud. We aren't Brene Brown. We aren't Mel Robbins. We aren't New Heights. We don't have that sort of listenership. And I'm going to say yet because that's one of my favorite words. So the impact isn't always loud and it's not always immediate, but we get these quiet little messages, these moments where we're at work and someone says, hey, I listened to your podcast last week. And when you said blah, 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 And they're having these moments that we hear about, and it really matters because it's this ripple effect that we don't get to always see, but every once in a while we're reminded that it's happening.
I think about too some of the conversations that I've heard people say where we've had people say like, "Hey, I listened to a big chunk of your podcast when I was driving home and it made me feel a little less alone because I had a 5 hours in the car and it was
Holly
great to
said
be able."
that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Holly
like
said
we
that.
got her through a snowstorm.
Right, right. And I know you've shared other texts where people
Mhm.
have reached out to you and said that they've been thinking about something and they were, maybe just having a really bad day and it was an episode that they needed to hear this particular message and it's the message that we were delivering and it just gave them purpose. And so I think those are all really important. And I kind of wanted to end with one of our other messages that we received from Shannon. And it said, your topic and topics make me feel seen. Every episode, I can relate to some wisdom you share. Thank you for bringing these topics to the forefront, and thank you for allowing me to be a guest and talk about co parenting. You are creating a community of wise people with a variety of experiences that come together weekly to share their expertise. Thank you for creating this community. Congratulations on your 50th.
Mm. Amy, we thought this podcast was supposed to be easy. And what we've learned is that the meaningful things rarely are, but they're worth showing up for anyway. And hearing from our listeners and all the new friends that we're making because people can approach us and say, I listened. It's been an amazing ride. It's definitely worth finding the space to do. And I'm loving every minute of it.
Me too. So I want to say, Cheryl, thank you for joining me on this journey and accepting the fact when I said all those months ago, hey, you know what? We should do a podcast. That'd be fun. I'm happy that you said, yes, let's give it a try. And also to that, thank you to all our listeners who have either been here from the very first episode or have just recently joined us. Thank you. Thank you. We greatly appreciate you for being here. And we hope that you're here for the next 50. Thanks for tuning in to This Was Supposed to Be Easy. Remember, the best stories are the ones we live.
Don't forget to like, subscribe, and keep the conversation going because life may not be easy, but listening in should be.
Stay curious, stay connected, and keep wondering.